Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are currently in the world, to join us for this session. My name is Michel Gougou, and my presentation is about cultivating communities of practice to support professional development in TESOL. It is an interactive presentation, so often you will have to write your answers in the chat box. Thank you again, and let's continue. I have now the outline. All right, the outline, the introduction firstly, then the body of the presentation, the teaching challenges, communities of practice for teachers, reflection on links, the conclusion, and the bibliography. Then we have the objective of the presentation. Okay, the objective is to enhance teachers and educators' skills by cultivating communities of practice. And to reach this goal, we started by a study. The study we used, and I tried. All right, okay. The introduction firstly, all right, the introduction. A study allowed us to make research, and now we have the introduction of this presentation. The context, currently there is a digital revolution and it produces a societal disruption. What does it mean? The using of technology changes the way to work in businesses, in management, and of organizations, and also in teaching approaches. And we have diversity of teaching, like the centered-oriented approach. We have also the CBI-centered content-based instruction, and so on. And the using of technology allows us to notice that we need a transformative teaching and learning approach in the 21st century in order to improve the learner effectiveness and also the English teaching effectiveness, in so that the learners be able to get new skills, new talents, and be more proficient in English learning. Then we have a study now, the way used in order to realize our work. And the study, we used a theoretical background, the virtual ethnography. And what is virtual ethnography? It is an approach used in order to collect the data online. We have to observe people doing things online, getting their conversations. And we applied the study, this theoretical tool, in during the TESOL Convention 2021, because we were member of a TESOL mentoring group. So the participants of our investigation were 9 TESOL attendees from the International TESOL Virtual Convention 2021. And the analysis methods used was of the conversation analysis in order to find the insights and trends, allowing us to help and share new ideas to the practitioners and the researchers also concerned by TESOL. Our findings in the second point, the first point of the findings, the development, we are firstly the teaching challenges. Yes, teaching challenges. And class size, information and communication technology, ICT integration, multilingualism, lack of resources, lack of opportunities of practice also. So that in the first point, the first challenge concerns the English teaching approach. And our findings, we have a first question to the learners, the participants also. In your environment, what is or what are the teaching challenges that you meet? Please write your answers in the chat box. We have 1 minute for this exercise. Okay, write your answers, please. Feel free to share in the chat box. Yes. Okay. Share your experience to your peers. Yes. Okay, thank you. Our findings, the curricula are not adequate to today's realities. Not teaching, listening, speaking. The lack of time for planning, overloading hours, respecting expectations from school administrations, and as consequences, low learning achievement and teaching effectiveness. So I have a question again for you in the chat box. We answer. Do you encounter the same consequences in your context? Please write your answer yes or no in the chat box. We have just some seconds for that. Please, it's an interactive session, so you have to write also your answers in the chat box. Thank you for your answers. So we see now the next challenge. The next challenge is the class size. Look at this picture. How can you describe this class? Do you encounter the same kind of class in your English teaching? And how does it represent a challenge for you? Please write some answers in the chat box again. Share your experiences to your peers. Yes. Okay. Our findings during our investigation, we have answers. Large classes result in lack of motivation and confidence to speak. Large class mean less opportunities for interactive activities. A lot of paperwork, also overcrowded classes. As consequences, very low participative and communicative learning. In your context, do you have the same consequences? Please mention it in the chat box again. Okay, thank you. The next challenge now, information and communication technology, ICT integration. Look at this picture. What do you see on this picture? Do you use this kind of tool in your teaching approach also? If so, what kind of challenge does it represent in your teaching effectiveness? Please share your experience with your peers in the chat box again. Yes, I see. Also, our findings in our investigation, we have its answers, making all students use new technology in the classroom. Also, the fact of making the school's administration buy in to using tech tools at school and in class. There is also the network problem and timing, the lack of ICT application in class management. As consequences, low application of ICT activities to enhance learners' proficiencies and teacher practices. In your condition, in your context, in your situation, do you encounter the same consequences? Again, you have to mention it in the chat box because it is an interactive session. And thank you for your participation. Great. We continue again. The next challenge that we found is with multilingualism. Look at this picture and think about your own teaching context. What are the languages used by the learners of the students? And how does these languages or this multilingualism represent a challenge for you? Explain it in the chat box. Okay, I see that you're very active. Congratulations, continue. Thank you. Okay, our findings, we have the question of the mother tongue interference, the overuse of native language, mother tongue in the classroom, and also the students' attitudes, not practicing English in the classroom and when they are in their communities. As consequences, learners lack confidence to use English language daily. Here is a testimony of a participant, a teacher. I'm obligated to speak both French and English while teaching, for my students have poor vocabulary in English. As consequences, the proficiency in English decreases, hence weak performance at school. So the question for you to, in your context, do you encounter this kind of situation as challenge? Is the multilingualism a challenge when you try to teach English? Yes? Okay. Thanks. I see that many people encounter this kind of situation. Great. We have to see now the next challenge of English teaching, the lack of resources. What are the resources that you have access in your classroom, in your environment, in your context? And do you think that you have enough resources to teach English correctly and to enhance your learners' skills, to motivate them in English using explain it in the chat box? It is a session of sharing, and I like when you write your answers also. Yes, I see that you're very active, you're very engaged. It's great. Okay, our findings. Lack of teaching materials is a problem, a challenge for English teachers. There is also the lack of resources and opportunities for curriculum design. Also, unable to make photocopies of the student's book, because you know, in Africa context and often the students, they don't possess enough money to buy the book, and the teacher wishing to help them during the English class has to make photocopies, but it's not often allowed. It is a big challenge. And as consequences, limited materials result in limited teaching effectiveness and learning motivation. In your context, do you encounter this kind of consequences also? Write your answers again in the chat box. Yes, you are very engaged. I see many people share this kind of situation. It's great. Well, so we have to see now the next challenge. The next challenge is the lack of opportunities for practice. In your English teaching environment, do you have often professional development for teachers, English educators? Do you have this possibility to learn from peers and so on? Write your answers in the chat box. And if you have this kind of opportunities, can you explain how it is done to improve your skills as English teachers? Yes. Share your experience with your peers in the chat box again. I can see in the chat box some answers. You're very engaged as audience, and I like it. Great. Our findings during our investigation. There is a lack of collaboration between English teachers. Also, a lack of training for teachers. And as consequences, we can see that the limited teacher training and collaboration impact negatively the effectiveness of English teaching. In your context of teaching, do you encounter also this kind of situation as consequences? Write your answers again. Share your experience with your peers in the chat box. Well, great. Okay. So now we have to see the next point. During our TESOL Convention 2021, we found the communities of practice for teachers as a way to support the teacher skills. So in this section of our presentation, we will see the theory, the three elements of the COP, the community of practice, and the impact. Now we continue. I have a question. Firstly, as a teacher, do you know, are you part of a community of practice? I want to know in the chat box, firstly. Yes, I see some answers. All right, so I will read a definition of community of practice. It is a socio-cultural perspective having that people construct and develop their identities and understanding through the active participation and engagement with others in cultural practices that are situated in a particular social communities, such as in a teacher education. This definition, quotation from Wenger, underline that the domain of teaching is concerned by the communities of practice. And it is a way helping to construct the identity of teachers, English teachers, and also to share and be engaged with peers in so that we be able to overcome our different challenges. We see now the next point, that is the others definition of community of practice. You can see it is the learning in social and comes largely from our experience of participating in daily life. So in a community of practice, we share experiences based on our own life, daily experiences in teaching, for example, but also we want to be engaged with peers, a process to share, to interact, and to enhance each other. For this reason, we see the next slide on the three elements of a community of practice. You can see the picture. Firstly, we have a domain. We have to define the domain, define the issues. We are TESOLers or English teachers. So it is a domain of English teaching. And this domain concerns also the area of shared interest and key issues. The community, we have the people who care about the domain, English teachers, educators, administratives, parents, and so on. And it is based also on the relationships built from the discussion, the activities and learning between these members, these people interested by English teaching and English challenges. Then the practice, the fact to share ideas, tools, information, goals, and also it's very important based on the body of knowledge that you share with the peers. You can share methods, stories, tools developed, and so on, just in order to enhance each other's skills. Then we see now on the next slide, the community of practice, here a picture, and I have a question. We have to give the answer in the chat box again. How can communities of practice help to overcome all of these teaching challenges in the case of teacher? Write your answers in the chat box, please. We have around 1 minute. You can write your answers in your context. How can you apply this theory of community or practice to overcome the point? Okay. We have the impact of the communities of practice. It is very important to see the impact because as member of community of practice, you need to get benefits. And the first point is that the fact to be member allows to get support network for members of the community. It means your peers, educators, English teachers, and so on. It allows also to improve professional development when there are, for example, trainings and so on. It is a good way for the members to enhance their skills. It is a way also to share knowledge and build better practices because we need to improve the skills of each one, but also we need to have an effective teaching result when we have to manage our classes. And it's also possible to reuse the information shared in the community. Then we have a last point. It is the fact to learn from previous mistakes. Yes, as English teachers, we don't possess all the knowledge, but it is by interacting with our peers that we can to avoid the same mistakes in our own environment. so that I think that we can also impact positively our English teaching activities. Then we continue with the next point. It is a finding during the TESOL convention again, reflections on links of literacy, information, and communication system. Then we have to see how you can cultivate your community of practice. So we start by introducing now links. Links is an online community, a community of practice for adult education practitioners. We have also professional learning space, providing high quality, evidence-based learning opportunities for adult students, but it's not only for adult students. Everyone can use the materials and resources of links to apply your own class also environment. It provides access to professional development materials that you can add in your own way, your own class. Support from experts and peers, collaboration, networking, participation in special events, and it is an online community open to everyone interested by English teaching and so on. On the next slide, we can see on the next slide now, the homepage of our links. You can see there is a community, and in the community, you can interact with your peers, whatever they are, whatever the topic, wherever they live, you can share your experience. There are courses, and these courses are ways of professional development. You can get certificates and so on. There are resources from the state, but also the resource collection. You can download the resource that you have to apply in your own class teaching. Now, we have to see another point with a question. I have a question for you now. Next point, please. It is very important to cultivate your own community of practice so that we have a short handout that you can use. Firstly, you have to define the domain of knowledge. What do we want to learn? It is the way to build your own community. We are in TESOL, so you have to identify this thing that you want to learn with your peers. What topics and issues do we really care about? It is the same case. And how is this community connected with parent organization? Because you are in an organization, a school, and you have relations with a ministry and so on. You have to be able to connect your community with these parent organizations. Then the next slide, we can see also, we have to also the domain of knowledge. What is in it for us? When we build a community of practice, it is not only to share knowledge, but you have to identify the main resources that can allow each other to be engaged and well integrated. Are we ready to take leadership in promoting and developing our domain? The leadership, the way allowing to reach the goal. You can ask yourself this question because it's very important for you to influence your colleagues and to influence also the English teaching policy in your country. So the next question, what kind of influence do we need to have? We have to identify it. Then now we have to see the second point of a way to build a community of practice. It is a community. You have to identify who can be a member of your community of practice. As an English teacher, we have educators, administratives, parents, and so on. You have to identify who can be a member. Also, what roles do members play? Because it is an interactive community. So they have to be engaged, define the roles of each other, and so that each one feels integrated and engaged in your activities. Define also how often does the community meet, because you have to organize events, activities, and they must be engaged and present. How do members connect? Do they connect by face-to-face meetings, You have to use digital tools and so on. We continue with the community on the next slide. And on the next slide, how are new members introduced in the community? The way to receive the new members and to allow them to be well integrated in your community, you have to define it. How do members exit the community? On your way, maybe a member can decide to leave the community because it doesn't find the appropriate resources that it seeks. So you have to define the way, the process. Then, what kind of work will generate energy and build trust? Because you need to be well known by your peers, but also to be accepted by the others as a good community of practice. So you have to identify the work that you do in order to improve the branding perception of your community. How can the community balance the needs of various members? There are freshers, experimented, advanced teachers, and so on. So in the resources that are shared in the community, you must identify how you can find the just balance in so that each one feels integrated in the community. And also, how will members deal with conflict? Conflict is something that is natural and it can happen in your community. So you have to identify also in the policy how you can manage and solve the conflict in your community or practice. Then we have to see now the practice. What knowledge will members develop, share, investigate, document, and so on? The key of a community of practice is also the fact to share ideas, documents, and so on. So you have to identify, since the beginning, what kind of documents can be useful to enhance the skills of the members, and in our context, of the English teachers. Also, identify what kind of learning activities will the community undertake. You can organize workshops, professional development programs, and so on. Also, you have to identify how will the community knowledge repository be organized to reflect the community unique contribution. You have to find a way to save and organize all the materials and resources in so that the members be able to consult them and to use them easily. So we have the next slide about this practice. How will the community access to the knowledge repository? You have to identify the way. Is it online that you save the materials or offline? And how can they use it and apply these resources in this own English teaching classes? And what projects will the community undertake? I said you have to organize professional development programs, activities like workshops and so on. And as a community of practice is for a long-term goal, so it must be defined in a project. Then, where will the community find sources of knowledge and benchmarks outside of the community? You can find, for example, the case of relations with other organizations, allowing you to get, for example, some books, some materials, again, partnerships. Then now we go to the end, the conclusion of this presentation. Firstly, it was very interesting to see the TESOL teaching challenges. We underline the teaching approach, environment, factors, resources, and opportunities of practice. Also, we underline that the communities of practice theory is very useful because it is a fact of learning with others, share experience of daily life, and it is focused on the domain of activities, the TESOL in our case, the fact to build a community with English teachers, educators, administrators, and so on, and the practice to share and to interact and to be focused on the way to improve every time your the effectiveness of your English teaching. Then cultivating your own community of practice. We have seen links, it is an online community of practice, but also you can build a face-to-face or online teacher community approach. Now, a call to action now for you. It is the end of the session. I want to know now, can you take the engagement to build a community of practice with your peers in your school, in your organization? Write your answers, please, in the chat box. Can you take also the engagement to create a community of practice with your students in order to improve the effectiveness of your English teaching? Write your answers in the chat box. Don't hesitate. Thank you again. We see now the next point, the bibliography. Okay. And at the end, do you have any questions? I'm available. You can reach out to me. And thank you again for your engagement in this session. Thanks.